This week, Connecticut's healthcare workers started rolling up their sleeves. With the arrival of the vaccine, how is the rollout going and what's the timetable for the rest of the state's residents?
The pandemic has battered the economy. Are we posed for recovery or a second recession? We'll talk with one of the nation's leading economists as well as a Connecticut expert.
And we're asking, how will the legislature convene in the new year if no one can enter the state capitol? We'll hear from the Speaker of the House and the Senate's new Republican leader.
It's all ahead, Sunday, December 20th, 2020.
From Eyewitness News, this is Face the State, Connecticut's most watched local political program.
Good morning, I'm Doobie McDowell.
And I'm Kevin Rennie. The pandemic has affected every aspect of the economy. Will widespread vaccinations trigger a recovery?
Before we look at the economy, let's get a quick update on the vaccine rollout. Returning to Face the State is Dr. Jessica Abrantes-Figueiredo, an infectious disease specialist at St. Francis Hospital. She's a member of the state COVID-19 Vaccine Advisory Group. Doctor, welcome back to the show. And we wanted to ask you whether the first week met your expectations.
Thanks for having me. And yes, it's been a whirlwind and so exciting. And we at St. Francis and Trinity Health of New England have actually been able to vaccinate over 1,000 of our colleagues as well with the vaccine rollout.
Doctor, will the approval of the Moderna vaccine change your the timetable that you've been anticipating for the availability of vaccines?
So we've been expecting, we expected actually since the beginning approval of the Moderna vaccine as well. So this will only help with our efforts in vaccinating as much of our colleagues as possible so that eventually we can certainly roll it out to our communities.
Doctor, what do you see happening in the week ahead? Is it healthcare workers and some nursing home patients?
Yes, so we're going to continue and roll it out to all of our colleagues across Trinity Health of New England, as is all hospital systems. And yes, long-term care facilities with the great help of Department of Health is going to definitely start and continue their efforts with vaccinating our long-term care residents.
Thank you, Doctor, for giving us an update on this issue that we're all paying a lot of attention to. Now we turn to the economy. Joining us from Cambridge and the Kennedy School is Massachusetts economist Jason Furman. He's professor at Harvard University and chaired the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama.
Welcome, Professor Furman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you put into perspective for us the damage that's been done to the economy by the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been an enormous amount of damage from the pandemic. Very extreme in the first month or two as large swaths of the economy shut down. But what we've seen since then is that as the shutdowns ended, a set of people just not being able to afford to spend as much, businesses that were secondarily affected, not directly affected by the pandemic, have been affected. And so now we have more workers who have permanently lost their jobs today than was even the case back in April or May.
So it's December. We are well past the time when we would have what originally was referred to as a V-shaped recovery from the first few months of the pandemic. Is that a novice's economic analysis?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite shape for the overall is a reverse check mark, which is you go straight down, you go about halfway up, which is what we've seen, and then it slows down the recovery from there. And the issue is it's really easy when a worker gets temporarily furloughed to bring them back to their job if the job reopens. What's a lot harder is people that have permanently lost their jobs. And maybe they're not going to be able to find a new job in a restaurant or the travel industry. They need to find one in another industry. That's the long and painful part of the recovery here.
How do you think the vaccines will affect the economy?
Yeah, so I think there'll be another month or two of darkness, both on the health side and in the economy. And then I think the vaccine will help. It will get us another fraction of the way to where we want to go. Restaurants can fully reopen. To get all the way there, though, we're still going to need people to be able to afford to eat in those restaurants. And if one has gone out of business, we're going to need, a new restaurant to take its place. All of that takes time. So the vaccine won't, instantly solve our economic problems, but it should help.
What changes do you expect the Biden administration will bring to our economic policies on responding to the pandemic?
Yeah, well, the president-elect wanted Congress to act right away without waiting for him to be sworn in. It looks like Congress is getting very close to a nearly $1 trillion deal. That deal really just gets us to, roughly the end of February or March. So President Biden will need to continue support for the unemployed, expand support for states, but then pivot away from relief and towards rebuilding infrastructure, clean energy, and also fixing parts of our system like the lack of paid leave that made it harder to deal with the pandemic in the first place.
After years of very low interest rates, the size of the stimulus packages has some economists worried about inflation. Do you see that as a risk?
No. People predicted inflation in the last crisis when we responded to it. It never happened. People were warning about inflation 9 months ago. It didn't happen. It's hard to get a lot of inflation in an economy that still has a high unemployment rate like we do. And by the way, if I had to worry, I'd much rather err on the side of reducing unemployment than worrying about a bit of extra inflation that's unlikely to happen anyway.
The American economy is certainly proving to be remarkably resilient in many ways. Should we begin to worry more about the size of the federal budget deficit?
I actually don't think that we need to worry very much right now. And the reason is that interest rates are really low. Think of a family that's thinking about whether to take out a mortgage or not. It matters a lot if you're going to have to pay $500 of mortgage a month versus $5,000 of mortgage a month. You think about how much you pay each month. Right now, we don't need to pay very much on our debt. Interest rates are going to go up probably at some point. So I think we want to not go, hog wild and completely crazy here. But I don't think right now we need to worry very much about our debt and our deficit.
I like that you're sounding sort of optimistic about the economy. This is making all of us feel a little bit better. Would that be an accurate statement?
I think that 2021, the economy will get a lot better. I don't think it will fully heal itself in 2021. And so I think we want to do more to continue to help it.
Now, you're someone who you've spent your career thinking big thoughts. Do you see permanent changes in things like the airline industry and automobile manufacturing because people are working more from home and not commuting?
Yeah, I think anything that was going to happen is going to happen faster. That is the easiest prediction to make. I do think, though, that, I don't think that visiting a virtual museum is quite as exciting as going to a museum. And so I think there's a set of things, especially around travel, personal travel, that won't change. Business travel, I think, will change more because we've discovered that Zoom is 80% as good and 10% as much hassle. And so maybe that's going to be worth it more often than we had thought before.
We've spoken on the show about the coming housing eviction crisis. Your thoughts on that? Is that going to be a national problem?
Yeah, I think that's potentially a national problem. It depends. Does Congress extend the eviction moratorium? Does it provide assistance for people with problems? Does it provide additional assistance? But yeah, it would be a cruel and heartless thing if we saw a wave of evictions in January on top of all the other problems that we're going through over the next few months.
We're pretty much out of time, but any final comment that you would like to make to us?
I think a lot of this is, we've been talking about economic policy. It's also how you handle the virus. And there's not that much more time left. But policymakers, governors like Governor Lamont, need to continue to stay on top of it. Connecticut's done a better job than many states, but there's more work for all of us to do on the virus itself.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Jason Furman of Harvard University.
Thank you.
We'll turn our attention to Connecticut's economy when we come back.
And we'll also consider how our state government will debate the big issues when they can't meet in person.